through it with them, and then we'll move some pieces around talking about where we see guys fitting for us, where we think they're going to be, and we'll play with that all week, huh?
Yeah, we'll go through different scenarios next week, we won't actually probably have a complete set board until late Wednesday, early Thursday.
And Martin, considering how the running back would be a smart decision to draft a running back in the first round?
Well, I think you want to keep your options open. We evaluate everybody. Every position is important, and you get a quality player who can help you win football games. I wouldn't put too much weight into what people think about valuing that spot. What's his value to you? What's his value to our organization, to our football team? That's where that comes into play.
Martin, when it comes to top 30 visits, how often in the past do you think there's a correlation with the guys you bring in or some of the guys you end up drafting, or is it just a total crapshoot? What's kind of that process like of actually, now that you've met with the 30 prospects that you brought in?
Well, there are different ways to look at it. On the one hand, sometimes you want to get guys in front of your coaches, get them on the board, get them talking football, to see how guys learn, how guys process. That's the reason sometimes you bring guys in. Sometimes you want to bring guys in because there is a concern, and whether it's a social concern off the field or an on-the-field concern, whatever it is, you want to talk through that stuff. Sometimes you haven't had enough exposure to a guy to get a real good feel for him. You missed him at the combine or whatever. So there are a variety of reasons why you bring guys in. And really this year we probably brought guys in all those different categories for different reasons.
And some guys we didn't bring in because we don't want you to know about it.
And Ron, when it comes to what a player, the scheme they're in college, is it easier to adapt to what you guys are doing for guys coming out of the draft than, say, free agency being in? Like, does the scheme matter less in college? If that?
No, I think it carries the same weight. It really does, because again, you really have to be very aware of that, and sometimes it doesn't translate, and that's something we learned a lesson a couple years ago. So again, you have to really be even more diligent now because of what you do. It really has to fit, and the player has to fit. If you don't get that, you'll find out, and that's the tough part, because a little bit of this is projection. You're trying to project whether or not the guy will fit in what you do, offensively, defensively, or even special teams. That was one of the conversations we've been having in our meetings. Is will some of these guys fit when they have to play special teams as well?
Just going back to the ownership thing real quickly, have you had a chance to talk to Josh Harris's group at all?
No, we're going to leave that to what's going on, but no.
Hey there, Ron. Just listening, and you've used the word confident, comfortable, saying how you feel right now going in. Could you elaborate a little more? Why is it that right now you're all smiles up there?
Well, just because I think I'm very encouraged with the turnout we've gotten. We've got a lot of guys that are here working, doing things they need to. They're doing it with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of excitement. I think a lot of it has to do with what we've done on the offensive side, bringing in Coach Bieniemy. I think Eric has brought some optimism, and you listen to the guys talk about it. That's been exciting. It really has. So very encouraged by that, and so. I kind of like where we are in terms of our positions. I like the players that we have. Again, I'm just feeling positive about it.
Hey, Coach, with all the evaluation events going on around the NFL draft build-up, is there kind of one specific environment that you found you kind of get a better read of who the player really is as a human being?
Wow, that's it's tough because Martin will tell you too, just like him, that's a big part of why you try to meet as many players as you can, whether it's at the combine, whether it's during pro days, or whether it's when you bring them in on the 30 or you have your pro day. You try to circulate and get a chance to get a feel for these guys. I think part of it too is if you have a connection at a school and you can just pick up the phone and call them, and some of these guys will give you some really good insight, especially the guys that you know and trust.
And you guys just had happy day, everybody. You guys got to see the players on the 17th for the first time. What about what you guys saw can help you sort of assess of what your needs will be and excites you about the upcoming draft?
Well, I think a big part of it is just seeing the guys that have come back and get an opportunity to talk with them. I mean, right now we the coaches aren't doing any football with them other than the meeting times. And so we kind of rely on, the interaction you have, whether it's at breakfast or lunch, or when you're just visiting with them. I mean, I try to, put myself in the hallway so they got no opportunity other than to say hi to me and talk a little bit. So, but when you talk to them and you listen to them and just see how they're feeling about things, I feel comfortable with our guys.
And then Martin, there's a lot of conversation this time of year about floors and ceilings with specific prospects. If you get on the clock and there's two guys and one's got maybe the higher floor but maybe not as much potential in your evaluation, but then another guy's got maybe the lower floor this year but a higher potential for the future, do you have a mechanism to kind of decide which one of those trumps the other?
Yes, I will look at Coach and ask him which one he wants.
Hey guys, in terms of trading up or trading back in the draft, obviously last year was a success. Got your guy Dotson and you still picked up picks. How do you go through that evaluation of when to trade up or when to trade back in the middle of the draft?
Yeah, frequently trade ups are situations where you see a player who you think should have been gone, and then you move up and try to get that player. The player fits you. It's an aggressive move to go up, I think, because you're giving up typically draft choices or other opportunities to pick other players to go and get that player. So you have to have consensus on a guy. You have to have a very, very strong opinion of a guy in my mind to move up, and that's be pretty much across the board. Where coach, myself, all the scouts, everybody's on the same page, and we all believe it's worth giving up another player to get that guy. I think from my history, my perspective, trading back has worked better for me. Most of the time when you're trading back, you're acquiring more picks, and it's been my experience that just having more volume and having more picks gives you more opportunities to hit, especially if you're scouting well in those mid-late rounds. And that's what happened for us last year. We moved back, we picked up a number of players we feel really good about, and those guys all have really bright futures with us right now. If we had gone up, I think we started with 5 or 6 picks to start the draft. So if we had gone up and given up picks, it would have been slim pickings for us. So it varies a lot. You have to be really strong, I think, in opinions in terms of moving up. I really prefer to move back most of the time.
Right now, the Snyder family still owns this football team. I know before the draft previously, you usually meet with ownership, talk to them maybe what the plan is. Have you had that conversation this year with the Snyder family, and what was that conversation like?
No. Again, we're leaving that discussion about ownership and all that, to the experts. So we'll skip that.
Okay. And finally, for me, in terms of what do you guys like on draft day? Is it stressful for you guys? Are you pacing? What is that like morning of the draft, afternoon of the draft, leading up to the night? What is that like for the both of you?
Well, I found that, there are some things that you can control and other things you can't. So the truth of the matter is the only time we get stressed is when we get to our pick. For the most part, we just sit here and just wait and see what happens. And like I said, 5 picks from when we do is when we start talking about the, what our clump of guys are and, who they can be for us and who we feel fits best for us. And we just continue to watch and wait, and hopefully the guy that we want the most is still looking at us. We were fortunate last year. We went backwards. Martin made a great deal for us, got us a few more picks. And the guy that we liked the most was sitting right there, and we were able to get Jahan. And again, not a lot of people knew that's the direction we were going. A big part of it was we didn't bring him in for the 30 visit. But that's the truth. I mean, we were very fortunate. And again, as Martin said, a lot of it was we created a better opportunity for us by being able to go backwards.
Yeah.
Hey.
In terms of draft day, I mean, it's not stressful, but it's long, simply because of the fact we do all this preparation. We get really excited. We're looking forward to, adding quality players to our team. And that thing doesn't start till like 8 o'clock at night, So, and I'm an early riser already. So
Yeah.
Usually I've been up for a long time, by the time it starts. But yeah, I mean, it's a long day, but it's usually a really good feeling when you've been able to go through that process and you drafted a player who makes your team better.
Hey, Coach. So, I mean, we're still dealing with some players who've had the COVID eligibility with some of these guys playing as many as like 60 games. But the caveat to that is that they're obviously coming into the draft a little bit older than they normally would be. So what are some factors you consider when evaluating players who have that much experience but may have a little bit of a later start to their NFL careers than they normally would?
Well, you do. That does come up. There's some guys that are 24 and 25, and I think there's a couple of even 26 that are coming out that have picked up the extra year, have had a redshirt year. They're coming out after 6 or 7 years. But again, you're looking at guys a little bit more mature. On the other hand, so there's some positives and negatives to it. Their game is developed. They've been in several different systems, so those are things that you believe that'll benefit them. But at the same time, you draft a guy like that, and he may not have the 10-year career because he's already 25 or 26.
Ron, what's it been like having Eric Bieniemy along for this draft process, and what's his voice been in the room so far?
It's been very interesting, very energetic. I mean, the dude is constantly on the go. I love his responses to the readings. I love his comments. His insight is very good. We've all really pretty much have learned very quickly what he's looking for what we want to do offensively and how he sees players fitting. And that was one of the really good things that as I said, when I was going through the process of finding the new OC, that was one of the things that I really liked, was listening to him talk about how our current players fit for what he wants to do. And that was a big plus. So now listening to it again, I get a little bit more of an education to understand, what he's looking for and what he's expecting out of guys.
Hey, Ron, with the uncertainty at the ownership level, I know that in the past you've talked about how relatively frequently you would talk with Dan. Has that been liberating, nerve-wracking? Has it impacted you maybe not having those conversations and not knowing what's coming next? Like, is it just a different approach to the draft?
It's now a different approach, and that's probably the biggest thing more than anything else, is that, again, what we talked about more so as anything as a group of us, and that's, myself, Marty, Rob, and Eric. We've talked about what our plan was, what we've been looking for since we finished the season in January. We got together, talked about, okay, this is our plan. This is what we wanted to do. We put together a 2023 projection and 2024 projection that we presented at one point, and we've stuck to that. That's pretty much what we've wanted to do. We got into a position in free agency, and as I said earlier, we were able to roster build off of a rookie contract. And because of that, we felt we were able to do the things we wanted to do. We signed 3 starters, guys that we feel very good about. We signed a quarterback to come in and help compete, and at the same time help develop a quarterback for us. And then we signed some more good quality players that are going to continue to add to the depth of who we are as a football team. And we were able to sign some of our own. Let's don't forget we were able to take care of Deron Payne as well. So there was a lot of things that we were able to do. But again, a lot of it was because when the season was over, we got together, we did our evaluations, and then we mapped out what our 2023, 2024 projections are going forward.
The biggest news in the league is the Jalen Hurts deal, both as a divisional opponent and as guys that manage the cap. What did you make of that contract?
Yeah, a lot of money. I mean, and it's hopefully it's a problem we have in 3 or 4 years with our quarterback.
Speaking of the cap, you guys made some moves towards the salary cap earlier in the offseason. Looks like, just looking at where you are now, maybe there has to be some more to come. How much of that is draft dependent? Depending what you do in the draft may determine how you make other moves towards the cap.
Yeah, the cap is something that I think Rob does a great job projecting, giving us suggestions, and managing the cap. For us, it's a process. The entire personnel process is tied to the salary cap. And it has to be managed, and I think Rob's done a really good job managing it.
And we'll continue to manage it, right on through, whether it's the draft or it's or if it's free agency. We'll just manage it and see what happens. And then once we start with mini camp, get through mini camp, we'll see what happens going into training camp.
Hi. Can you just talk a little bit about, you mentioned how kind of upper personnel has driven a lot of this draft process, just with the uncertainty right now with ownership. I mean, what is the process on draft night? Should you get an offer to trade up, trade down, make a player acquisition? I mean, do you all have full autonomy? Is there any?
Well, we've always had that. When we've been in the drafts, when it comes to the trades and everything like that, that's where Martin takes over. That's one of the things he does. those nights for us. He handles that stuff, and we've had full autonomy in terms of making those decisions. So that's something that we'll continue to do, unless something were to happen and it changes. But right now we have the autonomy to go out and make the decisions that we feel best about, and we'll continue with that until otherwise told.
Any just stress or added stress this year, knowing the uncertainty of the ownership picture for you all?
No. I mean, it's business as usual. Fortunately, we've been very busy the last couple of weeks.
We have.
So there's been a lot of noise out there, but we've been totally focused on this draft. And again, we're really excited about where we are right now as a football team, and excited about adding more players to our team the next week.
Darren Haynes here. Forgive me for not remembering. Did you say the Jahan Dotson move, was that a pre-planned move last year before the draft started? Was that a move that you thought of when the draft was already going along?
Yeah. No, we talked about moving back. It wasn't something that was.
No, it was something that was in the works. You know?
We talked about that here in the press conference.
I mean, it's one of the things that we'll do, during next week. Like Martin did last year. He talked about what our potentials and who we could possibly move back with. It's all part of the draft preparation. Is you got to talk about, hey, if all these guys are gone, what's the next move? And so last year, that was something that was prepared in case certain situations happened, and something that we felt we could do.
And to that point, that's part of our preparation for next week. Is I will be calling other teams and talking to them and feeling other teams out who wants to move up, who wants to move back, and they'll be calling me as well.
Give an exact number, but like how many different angles do you kind of have already like in your toolbox on which direction you guys could possibly go?
Yeah, I mean, well, it depends on where you are, and it depends on the demand for your pick. Obviously, if you have an early pick, there's probably more teams calling, trying to move up. Where we are right now, I will probably project up several spots in case we want to move up. We understand the value. We don't want to give up a whole bunch of picks, so I know how far we can go up. But then I'll probably talk to everybody, from 16 to 31, and gauge their interest in coming up.
Last year when the Saints traded up, like the receiver run kind of started to date. Is there a position in this draft that you think could have like a similar run that would allow you guys to trade back?
Yeah, it's very hard to predict that. We were talking about that a little bit today, just going through it. It's very hard to predict that, but we've seen it happen quite a bit. There is a position, I don't want to say what it is, but there are some we talked about today. It happens, and what happens is when you have, a smaller group of really good players, and then one or two of them start to go, people start to get nervous, and they want to make sure they can get theirs. So it's very unpredictable, and I look forward to it. It's a lot of fun. It's a fun process, and we know at the end of it we're going to be a much better football team.
All right, appreciate it. See you guys next Thursday.
Cool.
Thank you.
Matt, kicker.
Tweet out a picture with the hat. The hat was awesome. I saw you driving by. That is the look.
Long time no see.
We left right at the same time. He was kind of anxious to go, and we were like.
sure yet. Yeah, well, our station doesn't have that. I mean, like the guy who does sports, but we don't have a sports department.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they send me out for. I don't know if they'll send me out for
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So you
Where
guys
did you
are
come
just
from?
working off the news desk? That's how you're RSVP?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
We just want to make sure.
Oh, got it. Yeah. It will usually be me
Okay.
if it's during the day.
And remind me your name and first
David
name.
Kaplan. Yeah. I can send you an email if that's easier just with my contact info.
Yeah, that'd be great.